Welcome back to Culture Central Sports. I'm your host, Andre Monroe, and it has finally happened. Number 4 ranked Penn State will make its debut in the 2024 expanded college football playoffs against number 10 SMU. The game will take place at Beaver Stadium and will be a noon game whiteout. We have our 3 specialists, Kiera Baker, Mariah Elizondo, and Avery Hill. Avery, I gotta ask you first, will Penn State show up in possibly the biggest game in program history?
We're considering SMU the biggest game in program history?
First college football game in the playoffs.
I guess, but yeah, I do think they show up. I think SMU is a tough team. I think people still aren't giving SMU like the credit that they deserve. I mean, they have quality wins over Pittsburgh. Pitt, they were 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, whatever when they played SMU. All of a sudden, it loses 6 straight as soon as they lose to SMU. SMU, I mean, you look at Brandon Jennings. I mean, he's throwing 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That's a pretty good line. I know that his first loss of the season against BYU, he threw for 100-something yards. It wasn't that good of a showing, 50% completion, but he did improve against Clemson. I think it will be a good game, but I do think Penn State does ultimately show up. I mean, it's a home game. It's a whiteout. I don't see a reason for them to lose the game at all.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I want to touch on SMU. They're going to put up a fight. Penn State, they're not going up against a wacky team. They're number 10 out of all the teams in the playoffs. And not only that, they were in the American Conference last year, and they won conference before they came to the SEC. So we're not just talking about any team here, but the pressure is on Penn State. We talk about them losing to that Oregon game, and then they host their first playoff game at home. It's going to be a cold night, but the pressure's on him and James Franklin. I mean, when you look at all of these games where they haven't showed up big, especially the big games against Ohio State, against Oregon, they've underachieved. So when you go into these games, the SMUs, and if they go past it and play Boise State, these are games that they're expected to win. So if they don't win them, what is that going to say about this team? So the pressure is definitely on Penn State, but I do think that they'll come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, 2 teams coming off both losses in their conference championships games. They haven't seen each other since the 1948 Cotton Bowl. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot to face for Penn State and for SMU. I mean, Dre, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Penn State is going to win. I mean, it's SMU at the end of the day. This is a game you're supposed to win. I have a little bit concerned because James Franklin does not show up in big games. Avery, I know you have more on that because, James Franklin, his record against ranked teams is 12-26, 1-15 against top 5.
Yeah.
It's not looking good.
I mean, I think week after week, James Franklin, or not week after week, but big game after big game, James Franklin shows that he is not a good game manager whatsoever. I mean, when you look at bad game managers, I think of Jay Gruden. I think of, just some of the worst coaches in NFL history. James Franklin goes in that category, even though he isn't in college football one of the worst coaches. He can develop, he can recruit, but he cannot game manage. His clock management is not good. Going for 2 early in the fourth quarter when you have a whole nother chance to score and win the game does not make sense. And he kind of goes back on his logic because last year against Michigan, they talked about, they were like, why did you go for 2 when you're up 9 and you with 2, you make it a 7-point game. But if you don't get it, the game is over. He's like, points are hard to come by. He goes back on his logic so many times, which shows me that he's not the game manager that he should be. And he also just comes in with a bad game plan. If you look at Oregon, his game plan was not good. You want to get pressure on Dylan Gabriel, who you said is very poised, which he is. He's been playing college football, like Franklin said, for 10, 15, 20 years. Ever since I was born, Dylan Gabriel's had a football in his hands. He's just shown an inability to show up when it really matters, and it's really hurting his team's performances, even though he's building pretty good teams.
Yeah, I mean, 2 interceptions in an Oregon game. How are you going to let that happen as a coach? I mean, you're going to go for the biggest throw you could possibly make when you still have so much time on the clock. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Now, and also you mentioned about the top-ranked teams. He's also 3rd and 19 for top 10. And we haven't seen Penn State in a championship game since 2016. That's a whole bunch of new players into the roster. I mean, how can you let that happen? 8 years go by and now you want to show up? Are you going to show up in the playoff game? I don't see it.
That's true, and especially if they want to get deep into the playoffs after first and second round. When you're playing Georgia, they potentially might play them in the game before the CFP championship. So you cannot make mistakes like that, especially in big time games like that.
Yeah, and Penn State's no team like Georgia. I mean, both of your quarterbacks injured, horrible calls from the refs, and you're still going to pull off a win in an overtime play? That's crazy.
I mean,
Dre?
can I add something to that
Yeah.
refs thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but the refs excuse, I am tired of hearing it. It is a bad excuse. Everyone has bad refs. I mean, when you look at it, like his thing after the game, he said, "Oh, on the incomplete pass to Mariah, yes, it was a catch," but he said they should have reviewed because he didn't want to use his timeout because he's in 2-minute drill. So they're supposed to save you. Just because you don't want to use your timeout when you have an opportunity to challenge, it's not like he didn't have an opportunity to challenge. I'm getting sick of the excuses. I think that is the problem. James Franklin is not the best at accountability and just saying, this is my bad. Because this loss, the Ohio State loss, the losses, all the 15 losses against top 5 teams and the rest against top 10, they're on him. The talent is showing up. Like, even real quick, the defense, they didn't play the best, but they weren't put in the best position.
Yeah. Wait, but did you know that the refs were the same refs from the Ohio State game and in the Oregon game?
Didn't change the fact that they...
Yeah, that still sucked. They still suck.
Yeah.
It's okay.
All right, well, as I said earlier, I think Penn State will win. I have my concerns with James Franklin. I have my concerns with the defense too. But at the end of the day, I have, these top 5 players that I think will be key to winning. So give me my list because I have 5 players to watch for Penn State. First, A.J. Harris, the best cornerback on the roster. He took that Kalen King role of being that lockdown number 1 corner. And I think Kevin Jennings, SMU quarterback, threw 3 touchdowns in the last game against Clemson. So I think A.J. Harris will be very important to stopping that passing offense. Next one, we have Nick Singleton. A little bit of an up and down year, dealt with some injuries. But I think because, they rely on the rushing attack so much for their offense, I think Nick Singleton will be really important to getting that rushing attack going because SMU has the 4th best ranked defense in the country. So you can't be one-dimensional. If Nick Singleton has a good game, that'll open up the passing attack. Give me the next one. Abdul Carter got snubbed, in my opinion, for National Defensive Player of the Year. He's going to have a chip on his back. He's going to have some extra motivation. And we know if Abdul Carter can disrupt the game, their offense will be one-dimensional. And that's the key to victory, at least in my opinion. Give me the next one. Avery, you mentioned him earlier. He's not a player, but James Franklin, 12-26 against ranked opponents. Can you win the big game? That's what everybody talks about. Will James Franklin finally get over that hill? I think this is the game for him to do. It's not Ohio State. It's not Michigan. It's not Oregon. SMU, you're better than SMU. And like you said, it comes down to talent, but it also comes down to coaching. It comes down to in-game adjustments, all that type of stuff. And James Franklin, let's be honest, has not been good at that. But in my opinion, I think if there's any time for him to overcome that, it's going to be against SMU because that is a worse opponent. And then number 1, the quarterback, Drew A-List. I'm not really too concerned about Drew A-List. He's a good quarterback. He's been made leaps this year, but he has been turning the ball over in the last few games. Because of that, I think a turnover-free game will be the key to victory for the Nittany Lions, and I think Drew A-List will deliver that. But I'm going to pass it back to Kiera to give some reactions on my list because you might not agree.
Yeah, so I do love your list, but one person that is not on that list is TJ Warren, y'all. He has had an exceptional season this year, y'all. He has played phenomenal. He's 2nd in the season in receiving yards behind Todd Felton at Maryland, 1st in receiving touchdowns, and he's just been a great player. And also with the matchup with SMU, he's going to have a killer game, and he can have a killer game. SMU has allowed at least 4 receptions to other starting tight ends in the 4 of their last 5 games. So I think that he's going to come up big. He's going to have a stellar game, and he's going to be a top player to watch for this matchup.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But Drew A-List, seriously? I mean, you start off with 5 interceptions when you come into your junior year, and you're just going to let how many? 2 in one game, 3 in another. I mean, does this guy want the highest record for interceptions? It's crazy. I just want you to throw the ball to your actual player. Do you not know what color the jersey he's wearing? You're wearing the same one. Throw to your player.
Avery, it sounds like you got something to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, with Drew, if I am a Penn State fan watching him, I want him to make those shots, take those shots down the field. I don't think his picks are him being a bad player. It's him taking chances, something he hasn't been able to do. But one person you missed out on is Mother Nature. SMU's from Dallas. It's going to be cold. They aren't going to be ready.
Yes,
so,
that's true.
Dre,
TJ Warren,
any thoughts on that?
Best tight end in college football.
I think James Franklin will lead this team to victory. I'm not that big of a fan of him, but I think he will be able to get over the hump in this one. but only time will tell if we'll get a Penn State-Boise State matchup in the Fiesta Bowl. Thank you for watching Culture Central Sports, and until next time.